Caleb's Story, presented by Merge. Please be aware that within the following story, there are mentions of suicide, suicidal thoughts, depression, and anxiety. Take care of your own body-mind with that in consideration. The thoughts and ideas discussed in this story may not align with those of the Human Development Institute, Merge, or the University of Kentucky.
My name is Caleb Rader. I go by he, him pronouns. I was born and raised in central Kentucky. I have autism spectrum disorder. I got diagnosed with that when I was 2. I am very privileged in that regard. I think that's probably one of the biggest fun facts about myself. I studied psychology in undergrad at Eastern Kentucky University. Go Colonels. I gotta represent. I currently have 2 jobs. I work for the Department of Behavioral Health for Developmental and Intellectual Disabilities for the state of Kentucky. And I also work for UK, the Human Developmental Institute for the LEND program, the Leadership and Education of Neurodevelopmental Disabilities. It affects a lot of aspects of my daily life, ever since I was a kid, but, as I've grown up, I will say I have some, symptoms and otherwise, like, I'm more, like, sensitive to certain sensory information, especially, like, hearing and, touch. Those are, like, the senses that are, like, extra sensitive for me, but I would say that a lot of the things that affect me in my daily life are not actually due to my autism. They're actually probably due to the society surrounding me and how failure to accommodate sort of makes it from a condition into a disability, if that makes any sense. These expectations or the stigma surrounding like autism, or perhaps a lot of the negative stereotypes surrounding, if a lot of that was sort of changed into a more positive direction. If we were to sort of change the conversation surrounding autism, I think that would have a lot of benefits for like not just like autistic people, but for the larger neurodivergent community. I was told when I was younger that this is not something that really should be shared a whole lot, because it's like, "Oh, how are people gonna, like, react to you?" And I will admit, I took that to heart because it's like, "Okay, if I tell people about this, like, how differently will I be treated?" Like, it's almost like I have to, like, tiptoe almost, but luckily now I've started to develop this sort of positive identity. And when I do tell people the diagnosis, I get a lot of like mixed reactions. I've had the very stereotypical reaction of like, you don't look like you have autism. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Like, I've had like, "Oh, wow, great," and that's probably one of the best reactions I could probably ask for. It's like, "Great." I have actually had some really positive stuff. It's like, "Wow, that's amazing. Why don't you tell me what that's like?" It's like, "What are some accommodations I can make for you?" And they did approach me in a way that wasn't very, like, infantilizing, where it's like, "Oh, what can I do for you to make you more comfortable?" It's more of like, "Hey, is there anything I'm doing that can make you more comfortable? Is there language that I am using that makes you uncomfortable? And like, how can I be better?" I love the natural diversity of life, even in terms of like autism itself. Like, I love hearing what people are passionate about in like all different facets of life, whether it's a piece of media that they love, whether it's a piece of like research or like sort of niche that they have, when the passion that gets in their eyes when they talk about something and why it means so much to them. That is something that I find so much joy in. And it's also like really validating for me, honestly. If I see all of these people talking about these things that they love, maybe it's okay for me to like enjoy these things that maybe in previous like marks of my life may be viewed as like I still love like Nintendo and Pokemon, but people might say like at this stage of my life where I'm like entering like this adulthood, they're like, you should leave that stuff behind. But it's really nice to see people say like, this is what I'm passionate about and this is what I hold so dear. It allows me to say, you know what, maybe it's okay for me to actually enjoy these things once again, or maybe it's okay for me to like find joy in these things once again. I have a wall at my house that is, like, lined with, like, Pokemon plushies, and it's my pride and joy. Something that's really getting me excited is, and I hope that it continues, is people are starting to recognize neurodivergent voices, at least in the spaces that I'm in. It's not just this extremely like neurotypical lens. Like there is more diversity in the human brain that we need to start listening to because we've not been seeing a lot of progress in terms of like autism, like suicide prevention or autism, like substance use, but now people are realizing, hey, these are deficits or these are gaps of care that we are noticing. What can we do in order to help bridge those gaps? And something else that I'm absolutely loving is the destigmatizing talk surrounding a lot of mental health issues, especially surrounding talking about therapy and like just talking to other people and saying, hey, you know what? I'm not doing so hot today, which I think are really important conversations to be having with one another. So I also have depression and anxiety. Something that has really stuck with me is through my journey of mental health is that it's okay to not be okay. I love Kentucky, but we sort of have this idea of like, and I am seeing that we're slowly getting out of it, but there is still this sort of persistent idea of like, if you have like a mental health, it's kind of like shush shush or whatever, it's like, ooh, like you can't mention that. But something I've been learning is that it's okay to not be okay. It's only recently when I've developed a positive identity surrounding my autism. But when I had this idea about myself that I was a defective person because I had autism, I was actively suicidal. And it was horrible. That experience helped me learn that people would rather hear that you're not doing okay than hearing about your death. With people that you trust, it's okay to say, I'm not doing okay, and to advocate for your needs to get better. I want more healthcare providers to talk to like actual autistic people, like get that neurodivergent perspective for whatever therapy or otherwise that you are doing. It's like, okay, I am creating something for autistic people. For a very long time, autistic people were excluded from so many participant studies, and autism was even like exclusion criteria for a lot of research and stuff. If you are creating something for autistic people, do your best to try to include autistic people in that conversation, whether it's reaching out to your local organizations or otherwise. That's the biggest advice that I can give. I'm currently involved in Lend, and it is honestly one of the best experiences that I have ever had. I get to learn I get to learn more about like not only myself, but like I've learned about the history of neurodiversity, like the people before me that and how they fought for like the rights of the disabled. We get to learn more about the social barriers that prevent a lot of care for the neurodivergent community and the disabled community at large, especially moving from a sort of medical model, which is a medical model is saying that a person with a disability is something that needs to be fixed. What if disability, especially neurodevelopmental disabilities, instead of something that needs to be fixed, what if instead we viewed it as natural diversity of life? And what can we do to change the environment? Not change the person, change the environment in order to better accommodate that person so that they can reach their full potential. Like multiple people in like the Lend program have been working in their own unique ways in order to achieve that. And I am so lucky and I am so happy that I'm a part of it. Not only do I love Dungeons and Dragons, you've described it perfectly well. Like everyone else is playing fighter. What if I just want to be a wizard? The campaign, instead of asking the person making the wizard character sheet, like, hey, this campaign is not built for a wizard. Change your class like everyone else to be a fighter. Everyone else is playing fighters. Instead, change the campaign to accommodate the wizard in your life, accommodate the cleric in your life. I wish people would not always see us as like this stagnant thing because it's neurodiversity. Even within like autism and all that, although like media portrayals are always like they're like the media portrayals of autism are always like the same. It is this uh white like privileged researcher or otherwise you're good doctor, you're Sheldon Cooper, I say as like I am. But nonetheless, they are all this stagnant representation of what this is when really I wish people would realize that there is such a large spectrum of and it's neurodiversity that there's so many people. And I think something that we need to be working forward towards is realizing that it's a person. When you've met one person with autism, you have met one person with autism. And we need to start doing our best to accommodate and make individualized supports for as many people as we can. They include me on the conversation, especially where I work, when they're saying, hey, we want to do something with autistic people and we thought of you. How can we make this more autistic affirming? Being included in that conversation has been so validating. And in terms of like my friends and my family, it's when they ask me, okay, we've used this language in the past, or like we've said these jokes in the past. Are these okay or are these not okay? Having like conversations like that were so important to me because it made them see this crucial aspect of my identity and made me feel seen and not in like a negative way. That was probably the most important part for me. And also when they would just reach out to me and say, hey, how are you doing today? It's acknowledging without infantilization. I one day want to create or help create an autistic affirming version of a suicide prevention plan. Currently, in suicide prevention research, there is not a lot created for autistic people by autistic people. And that's the goal, because I think that suicide prevention in autistic people, I mentioned that it can be overlooked in some cases. I have even come across people who say that autistic people can't be suicidal. My goal is to one day help create a form of suicide prevention that takes in the perspective of autistic people and make sure that in the interview that the autistic person feels seen. They are talked to and not talked at. I think watching this story, I think one of the most important things, if you are creating something for anyone, do your best to get the perspective of the community, not the population, the community of who you're trying to create it for. If you are trying to create something for the autistic community, try to involve autistic people, whether as collaborators or otherwise, try to involve them in every step. Because that's something that we in the autistic community have unfortunately been denied for a while. And it can hurt in a lot of bad ways. And I think something else I want people to know is it's okay to not be okay. And try to reach out to the people that you trust.
To learn more about Merge, please visit us at hdi.uky.edu/MERGE.